My name is Mara Ellison, and I want you to imagine sitting in a beige conference room while 23 people you trusted tear apart every piece of who you are for 2 straight hours. They had prepared a list. 190 specific reasons why I didn't belong at the company where I'd given 3 years of my life. Reason number 47, leaves exactly at 5 p.m. Reason number 92, never asks for help. Reason number 156, brings lunch from home instead of ordering with the team. Reason number 190, makes weird humming sounds during lunch. I sat there listening to my project manager, Daphne, read each item with the enthusiasm of someone announcing lottery numbers. My direct supervisor, Knox, nodded along like he was conducting an orchestra of destruction. 21 other faces stared at me, waiting for me to break down, make excuses, or storm out. But here's what they didn't know. 3 days earlier, I'd received the most important phone call of my career. And as Daphne finished reading the last reason on their list, I stood up, smoothed my navy dress, and said 5 words that changed everything. Thank you for the feedback. Then I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I'd memorized. Hello, this is Mara. I accept your offer. Yes, the $250,000 signing bonus works perfectly. Before I tell you what happened next, I need to know something from you. Have you ever been the person who makes everything work while everyone else takes the credit? Because what I'm about to share will either make you feel understood or make you realize you need to start protecting yourself immediately. Let me take you back to where this all began. 3 years ago, I started working at Lexford Advisory. Wait, that's not the real name. I can't use the real name because what happened next involves some serious legal territory. Let's call it Emerald Consulting. I was hired as a junior analyst, which basically meant I was supposed to do research and make pretty charts for senior people to present to clients. But from my first week, I noticed something that would define my entire experience there. The company was held together by duct tape and luck. Their biggest client, a manufacturing company worth millions, was threatening to leave because their quarterly reports were always late and full of errors. I watched Knox scramble for days trying to fix the mess. So I stayed late, found the root problem in their data collection system, and created a solution. I left it on his desk with a simple note. This might help. Knox presented my solution the next morning like he'd invented it himself. The client stayed. Knox got a promotion. That became my life. I fixed problems that didn't officially exist, solved puzzles that others created, and watched as my fingerprints disappeared from every success story. When the computer system crashed during a major presentation, I rebuilt the database from backup files at home while everyone else panicked. When a client demanded impossible timeline changes, I figured out how to make it work by redesigning our entire workflow process. But I made one critical mistake. I never demanded credit. I never played politics. I never made myself visible in the ways that apparently mattered. I thought excellence spoke for itself. I thought solving problems was enough. I thought being reliable meant being valuable. I was wrong about all of those things. The truth is, while I was keeping their business alive, my colleagues were building something else entirely. They were building a case against me. It started small. During team meetings, people would make comments about how I didn't participate enough in office culture. When I focused on work instead of chatting about weekend plans, someone would whisper that I was antisocial. When I ate lunch at my desk to catch up on projects, they said I was not a team player. Knox began scheduling important meetings during my lunch break, then acting surprised when I asked for updates. Daphne started giving me assignments with impossible deadlines, then expressing disappointment when I had to work late to complete them. A new hire named Quentin made jokes about how I probably lived at the office because I was always the first one there and often the last to leave. But the real turning point came 6 months ago. I was working on the annual strategy report for our biggest client when my phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize, but the voice on the other end changed everything. Ms. Waverly, this is Elena Martinez from Strathmere Strategy. We've been watching your work for quite some time. Would you be interested in discussing a senior position with our firm? Strathmere Strategy. Every person in our industry knew that name. They were Emerald Consulting's biggest competitor, the company that won every contract we lost, the firm that somehow always seemed to be one step ahead of us in every proposal. Elena explained that they'd been tracking the success patterns at Emerald Consulting for over a year. They'd noticed something interesting. Every major win, every retained client, every innovative solution had one thing in common: my work, my ideas, my problem solving. They weren't trying to steal trade secrets or poach random employees. They were trying to hire the person who was actually driving success at their biggest competitor. They were trying to hire me. The offer was staggering: triple my current salary, a signing bonus that was more than I made in 2 years, my own team, my own office, and something I'd never had at Emerald Consulting: recognition for the work I actually did. I told Elena I needed time to think about it. I wasn't ready to abandon the company where I'd invested so much of myself. Loyalty meant something to me, even if it wasn't reciprocated. That loyalty was about to be tested in ways I never imagined. Over the next few weeks, the atmosphere at work shifted. Conversations stopped when I entered rooms. People started excluding me from lunch plans they'd never invited me to anyway, but now they made sure I knew about it. Daphne began assigning me tasks that seemed designed to set me up for failure. Then Knox called me into his office for what he said was a routine performance discussion. He sat behind his desk with a legal pad covered in notes and told me that several team members had expressed concerns about my fit with company culture. What specific concerns? I asked. He flipped through his notes like he was reading a script. Well, you don't seem to engage with your colleagues on a personal level. You don't participate in team-building activities. Some people feel like you think you're better than everyone else. I complete every assignment ahead of deadline. I've helped solve problems that saved us 3 major clients. I work more hours than anyone else in this department. Work performance and team dynamics are 2 different things, Mara. This is a collaborative environment. We need people who can work well with others. The irony was suffocating. I was the only person actually collaborating with anyone. When Quentin needed help understanding client requirements, I spent hours walking him through the process. When Daphne's presentations fell apart, I quietly fixed them and never mentioned it. When Knox's strategies failed, I found alternatives and let him take credit. But apparently, collaboration meant laughing at jokes I didn't find funny and pretending to enjoy conversations about television shows I didn't watch. 2 weeks later, Elena called again. Strathmere Strategy had won another major contract, beating out Emerald Consulting by proposing exactly the kind of innovative approach I'd been suggesting for months. Elena asked if I'd reconsidered their offer. "We're prepared to increase the package," she said. "And honestly, Mara, we need someone with your skills. We have 7 major clients asking specifically for the kind of analysis you're known for." "What do you mean known for?" "Your reputation in this industry is bigger than you realize. When companies need real solutions instead of fancy presentations, they ask for you by name. They just don't know your current employer doesn't value what you bring to the table." That conversation haunted me for days. I started paying attention to things I'd ignored before. When clients called our main number asking for help, the receptionist often transferred them directly to my extension. When other firms tried to recruit our senior staff, they mentioned wanting to understand how Emerald Consulting achieves such consistent results. I was the consistent results. I was the reason clients stayed. I was the secret ingredient everyone else was taking credit for. But I still wasn't ready to leave. Something inside me believed that loyalty and hard work would eventually be recognized. I thought if I just kept proving my value, the people around me would eventually see it. I was about to learn exactly how much they valued me. The meeting was scheduled for a Thursday afternoon. Knox sent an email to the entire team. Mandatory staff meeting to discuss team performance and collaboration improvement strategies. Nothing unusual about that. We had these meetings every few months. I walked into the conference room expecting another lecture about synergy and team building. Instead, I found 23 of my colleagues sitting around the table with printed documents in front of them. Knox stood at the front of the room with Daphne beside him, both wearing expressions I'd never seen before. "Mara, please have a seat," Knox said, gesturing to a single chair facing the rest of the group. That's when I noticed the banner someone had hung on the wall behind Knox's head. Team Improvement Initiative, building a better workplace together. Daphne cleared her throat and lifted a thick stack of papers. Over the past several weeks, team members have been documenting specific behaviors and patterns that impact our collaborative work environment. We've compiled these observations into a comprehensive list that we'd like to share with you. My brain struggled to process what was happening. A list? 190 specific reasons why your current approach to teamwork needs significant adjustment, Knox explained. We're going to read through each item so you understand exactly how your behavior affects your colleagues. The room went completely silent except for the hum of the air conditioning system. 23 pairs of eyes stared at me, and I realized this wasn't a performance review or a team-building exercise. This was a coordinated attack disguised as constructive feedback. Daphne began reading. Number 1. Arrives at work before anyone else, making colleagues feel guilty about their schedule. Number 2. Never joins conversations about weekend plans or personal life. Number 3. Eats lunch at desk instead of socializing with team. Number 4. Completes assignments too quickly, making others feel inadequate. Number 5. Offers solutions without being asked, implying others are incompetent. She continued reading, and reading, and reading. For 2 solid hours, I sat in that chair listening to every quirk, every habit, every personality trait that made me who I was, being dissected and criticized by people I'd helped, people I'd covered for, people whose mistakes I'd quietly fixed dozens of times. Number 38. Never laughs at Knox's jokes during meetings. Number 59. Prefers email communication over face-to-face conversation. Number 73. Doesn't own a television, making it impossible to discuss popular shows. Number 112. Brings homemade coffee instead of buying from office machine. Number 147. Knows too much about client needs, making others feel uninformed. Number 168. Stays late to finish projects, creating unrealistic expectations for others. Number 185. Remembers details from meetings that others forgot. As Daphne read each item, I felt something inside me crystallizing. Not breaking, not crumbling, crystallizing. Every word made me more certain of something I'd been avoiding for months. These people didn't want me to improve. They wanted me gone. When Daphne finally reached number 190, the room fell silent again. Everyone stared at me, waiting for my response, waiting for tears, arguments, apologies, or resignation. Instead, I stood up, smoothed my dress, and said, "Thank you for the feedback." Then I pulled out my phone and made the call that changed everything. "Elena, this is Mara Ellison. I'm ready to accept your offer. Yes, the $250,000 signing bonus works perfectly. When would you like me to start?" The silence in that conference room was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. 23 people who had just spent 2 hours explaining why I didn't belong there suddenly looked like they were watching their own execution. Knox's face went through about 7 different expressions in 5 seconds. Daphne dropped her stack of papers. Quentin's mouth actually fell open. "I can start Monday." I continued into the phone, never taking my eyes off Knox. "And yes, I understand you'd like me to bring my client relationships with me. I think that can be arranged." I ended the call and slipped my phone back into my purse. The room remained frozen. "Well," I said, gathering my notebook and pen from the table, "I appreciate you taking the time to help me understand why I'm not a good fit here. It's made my decision much easier." Knox finally found his voice. "Mara, let's not be hasty. This was meant to be constructive feedback, not..." "Not what? Not a coordinated effort to humiliate me into quitting? Not a 2-hour character assassination disguised as team building?" I walked toward the door, then stopped and turned back. "You know what's interesting? In 3 years here, not one of you ever asked me why I work the way I do, why I arrive early, why I stay late, why I focus on solutions instead of socializing." I looked directly at Daphne. "You want to know why I don't laugh at Knox's jokes? Because while he's making jokes, I'm usually thinking about how to fix whatever crisis he created that morning. You want to know why I eat lunch at my desk? Because that's when our West Coast clients call, and someone needs to be available to help them." Then I looked at Knox. And you want to know why I complete assignments so quickly? Because I actually understand what our clients need, and I've been doing the work that three other people should be doing. I reached for the door handle. Enjoy explaining to your clients why their trusted contact won't be available anymore. I'm sure they'll understand. The next morning, I cleaned out my desk before anyone else arrived. I wanted to avoid the awkward conversations and fake concern that would inevitably follow. But as I was packing up my personal items, I found something that made me pause. In my filing cabinet, I had folders for every major client we'd worked with over the past 3 years. Not official company files, but my own notes. Detailed records of every conversation, every preference, every concern, every solution I'd provided. Relationship maps showing who made decisions, who influenced those decisions, and what mattered most to each organization. I'd kept these records because I genuinely cared about doing good work. But looking at them now, I realized they represented something much more valuable. They represented 3 years of trust, relationship building, and problem solving that belonged to me, not to Emerald Consulting. My phone buzzed with a text from Elena. Welcome to Strathmere Strategy. Can we schedule a call to discuss your transition plan? I photographed every page in those folders before I left the building. The weekend between my last day at Emerald and my first day at Cobalt was surreal. I kept expecting to feel guilty about leaving, or nervous about starting over. Instead, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: excitement about going to work. Elena met me in the lobby of Strathmere Strategy's downtown office on Monday morning. The building was everything Emerald Consulting's outdated space wasn't. Modern, efficient, designed for people who actually wanted to be there. Before we go upstairs, Elena said, I want you to understand something. We didn't hire you to be another analyst. We hired you to be exactly who you already are. The person who solves problems nobody else can solve. The person who builds relationships that last decades. The person who makes impossible things possible. She handed me a folder marked Client Transition Opportunities. These are companies that have expressed interest in working with Strathmere Strategy, but only if we can demonstrate the same level of service they've grown accustomed to elsewhere. I think you'll recognize most of the names. I opened the folder and felt my heart start racing. Every major client from Emerald Consulting was listed. Not just listed, but detailed with specific notes about their current frustrations, contract renewal dates, and decision-making timelines. How did you... We didn't steal this information, if that's what you're wondering. These companies reached out to us. Apparently, there's been some concern in the industry about service quality at certain firms. Companies are quietly exploring alternatives. Elena led me to an elevator that required a key card to access the executive floors. Your office is on the 15th floor. Corner office, southeast exposure, view of the harbor. Your assistant starts tomorrow. Your team of 4 analysts starts next week. The elevator doors opened to reveal a space that took my breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows, modern furniture, and an energy that felt completely different from anywhere I'd ever worked. One more thing, Elena said as we walked down the hallway. We've been planning to open a satellite office for our expansion into the regional market. Based on your experience and client relationships, we'd like you to head that project. The location is 3 blocks from your former employer. We thought the proximity might be convenient for client meetings. 3 blocks. They wanted me to open an office 3 blocks from Emerald Consulting, targeting the exact same market, with the exact same clients I'd been serving for 3 years. My phone started ringing before I even reached my new office. Ms. Waverly, this is Tom Chen from Granger Materials. I heard you'd moved to Strathmere Strategy. We've been having some issues with our current consulting firm, and I was wondering if we could schedule a meeting to discuss transitioning our account. Granger Materials, Emerald Consulting's second largest client. I'd be happy to meet with you, Tom. How does Thursday afternoon work? 3 more calls came in before lunch, all from companies that had been working with Emerald Consulting, all asking about the possibility of switching to Strathmere Strategy, all mentioning my name specifically as the reason they were interested. By the end of my first week, I had meetings scheduled with 7 of Emerald's major clients. Not because I'd solicited them, not because Cobalt had pursued them aggressively, but because these companies had been quietly unhappy for months and were just waiting for an alternative they could trust. It turns out that when you're the person actually solving problems and building relationships, people notice. They notice when their calls get returned promptly. They notice when their concerns are addressed thoroughly. They notice when solutions actually work. And they definitely notice when that person suddenly becomes unavailable. Knox called me on Thursday afternoon, just as I was heading into my meeting with Granger Materials. Mara, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Several of our clients are asking about you, and I wanted to clarify that you're still bound by your non-compete agreement. I almost laughed. Knox, you might want to have your legal team review my employment contract. I signed a non-disclosure agreement about internal processes and confidential information. I never signed a non-compete. Your company doesn't offer those to analyst-level employees. Silence on the other end of the line. Besides, I continued, I'm not soliciting your clients. They're soliciting me. There's a significant difference. Look, maybe we can work something out. What would it take to get you to come back? We could discuss a promotion, maybe a raise. Knox, 2 weeks ago you facilitated a meeting where 23 people spent 2 hours explaining why I shouldn't work there. I'm going to assume you meant what you said. I ended the call and walked into my meeting with Granger Materials. Tom Chen looked exactly like I'd expected based on our phone conversations over the past 2 years. Mid-50s, practical suit, the demeanor of someone who valued efficiency over everything else. Mara, I'll be direct. Working with Emerald Consulting has become frustrating. Our account manager doesn't understand our industry. Our reports are consistently late, and when we have problems, it takes days to get answers. But every time we called you directly, everything got resolved immediately. He slid a contract across the table. We want to work with you, not with your former employer. Can Strathmere Strategy handle our account? The contract was worth $1.2 million annually. It was Granger Materials' entire consulting budget, and they were offering to transfer it completely to Strathmere Strategy. We can absolutely handle your account, Tom. When would you like to start the transition? Immediately. We've already notified Emerald Consulting that we won't be renewing our contract when it expires next month. That meeting lasted 2 hours. By the time I returned to my office, I had 4 voicemail messages from other Emerald clients wanting to schedule similar meetings. Knox called again that evening. Mara, we need to talk. Granger Materials just terminated their contract. Oakline Logistics is refusing to renew. Northacre Holdings wants to cancel their project midstream. What exactly are you telling these people? I'm not telling them anything, Knox. I'm listening to them. Apparently, that's something they haven't experienced much lately. This is corporate sabotage. We're going to have to involve our legal team. Feel free. I'm sure they'll be very interested to learn that you're claiming ownership of client relationships that were built by an employee you just spent 2 hours explaining doesn't belong at your company. The legal threat never materialized. Probably because their lawyers explained the same thing Elena had explained to me. Client relationships belong to the person who built them, not to the company that employed that person. Over the next month, the exodus accelerated. 7 major clients representing 60% of Emerald Consulting's annual revenue chose not to renew their contracts. Not because I convinced them to leave, but because they'd been unhappy for months and finally had an alternative they trusted. Elena was delighted. I've never seen anything like this. Companies are calling us asking specifically for you. We're going to need to accelerate the timeline for opening that satellite office. The satellite office. 3 blocks from Emerald Consulting. I'd almost forgotten about that detail in the excitement of building my new team and managing the client transitions. How quickly are we talking? 2 months. We've already secured the space and we're fast-tracking the setup. The goal is to have you operational before the end of the quarter. 2 months later, I stood in the lobby of our new regional office, watching as movers installed our company sign in the window facing the street. Anyone walking from the parking garage to Emerald Consulting's building would see it. Strathmere Strategy Regional Office. Mara Ellison, Senior Director of Client Relations. My name, on the sign. After 3 years of invisible work, my name was finally visible. That first morning in our new office, I watched through my window as Knox walked past on his way to work. He stopped in front of our building, stared at the sign for a full minute, then pulled out his phone. I'm sure he was calling someone at Emerald to report what he'd discovered. By 10 a.m., Daphne had driven by twice. By noon, 3 other former colleagues had found reasons to walk past our building. But the best moment came at 2 p.m., when I saw a familiar car pull into our visitor parking space. Tom Chen from Granger Materials, arriving for our monthly strategy meeting. As he walked past the window, he waved at me and smiled. Through the glass, I could see him mouth the words, "Thank you." That's when I understood the real revenge wasn't just leaving Emerald Consulting or taking their clients. The real revenge was building something better. Creating the kind of workplace I'd always wished existed. Proving that excellence actually could speak for itself when it was given the right platform. 6 months later, our regional office had grown to 15 employees. We'd won 12 new clients who had never worked with Emerald Consulting. Our revenue projections for the first year were already being exceeded in month 6. Elena visited our office to check on our progress. As we sat in my conference room overlooking the street, she asked me something I hadn't expected. Do you ever wonder what your former colleagues think about all this? I looked out the window toward Emerald Consulting's building. I know exactly what they think. They think I stole their clients. They think I sabotaged their business. They think I'm the villain in this story. Are you? I thought about that question for a long time. I don't think so. I think they created a situation where their clients had to choose between loyalty to a company and loyalty to the person who actually served them. And the clients chose the person. Elena nodded. What would you tell them if you could? I'd tell them that the 190 reasons they listed for why I shouldn't work there turned out to be 190 reasons why I shouldn't work anywhere. Except they were wrong. I shouldn't work anywhere I'm not valued. I shouldn't work anywhere my contributions are invisible. I shouldn't work anywhere excellence is treated as a character flaw. I stood up and walked to the window. But I should definitely work somewhere that appreciates what I bring to the table. Somewhere that puts my name on the sign. Somewhere that lets me build something instead of just fixing what other people break. Elena smiled. Any regrets? Just one. I wish I'd made that phone call 6 months sooner. As I'm telling you this story, it's been almost 2 years since that meeting in the conference room. Emerald Consulting is still in business, but they've had to lay off 8 people and downsize their office space. Knox is no longer the department manager. Daphne left the company 6 months ago. Our regional office now employs 23 people, the same number who sat in that conference room listening to my character assassination. But these 23 people come to work excited about solving problems, building relationships, and creating value for clients who appreciate what we do. Every morning when I arrive at work, I see that sign with my name on it. And every morning, I remember that the best revenge isn't destroying the people who underestimated you. The best revenge is proving them wrong by building something they could never imagine. So here's what I want you to take from my story. If you're the person who makes everything work while everyone else takes credit, start documenting your contributions. If you're the person who solves problems nobody else can solve, start making sure people know you're the one solving them. And if you're the person who gives loyalty to people who don't deserve it, start giving that loyalty to yourself instead. Because the people who undervalue you are counting on you to undervalue yourself. They're counting on you to stay quiet, stay invisible, and keep fixing their mistakes without demanding recognition. Don't give them that satisfaction. Tell me in the comments, have you ever been the invisible backbone of your workplace? Have you ever been underestimated by people who should have known better? I want to hear your stories, because I guarantee you're not alone in this experience. And if this story resonated with you, if it made you think about your own situation differently, if it gave you the courage to start valuing yourself the way you deserve to be valued, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about people who refuse to stay invisible. Because your story matters too, and it's time for people to see your name on the sign.